right, church. Well, we're going to spend most of our time in two places tonight, Joshua chapter 15, as well as the book of Numbers, chapter 13, and into chapter 14. So if you would, find your place in both. But what I've done is I've kind of skipped over some things to get us to Joshua 15, and I want to go back over them. So I'm going to put my foot on the gas pedal, and I'm going to run through Joshua chapter 13 just a little bit and catch us up to speed and get us into Joshua chapter 15. I'll tell you why I do this. When I read through the Bible in my personal quiet time, my time when I'm alone with God and I'm praying and seeking God, usually early in the morning, I don't skip a word. I read everything. I've told you I read 3 chapters a day usually. Sometimes a little bit more. But when I read lists even. Some people say, well, some of that stuff in there might be boring. It's a list of names. I don't care. It's the Word of God. And because it's God's Word, I honor God's Word and I read it all. And so what we have as we start to get into this section of Joshua is a few different things that, although I'm not going to read the entire text, I'm not going to go through a lot of the minutia. I mean, I could stand up here with a map. In fact, I've got a map I thought about bringing out, but it's so small, even though it's a big map, it's not big enough so that anybody in the back could even tell what was going on up here. So I'm just going to tell you a few things that are going on, because when you read your word, and you get to Joshua, I want you to maybe be mindful of a few of these things as you go through it, so maybe there'll be a little bit of understanding as you progress through the book. So when you get to the point of Joshua chapter 13, a war campaign has taken place that has taken about 5 to 7 years. And during that time, the Jewish people who had been brought out of Egypt, who were slaves, and had wandered through the wilderness for some 40 years because of their disobedience. The generation that was disobedient died off. God raised up another generation. Now God has brought them in to the promised land. There was a land that God promised them that He was going to give them, and now they're in there. And God was bringing them in large part because the people in that land were so evil that God had chosen to judge them and to punish them, and their punishment was that this war was going to take place, and they were going to lose, and they were going to lose everything, and the people coming in were going to take it over. So the land that God had promised to the Jewish people, He was now delivering on that promise. The big war campaign had taken place where Joshua had marched his people through the middle of the land, divided it, took the south, then came back and took the north, and now for the most part the land is subdued. And that's where you pick up in verse 1 of chapter 13. The end of chapter 12 is a list of all the kings that they defeated and the battles that they were victorious over the armies of these kings. And so it says in verse 1 of chapter 13, Joshua was old and advanced in years. And the Lord said to him, you're old and advanced in years. And very much of the land remains to be possessed. And this is the land that remains, all the regions of the Philistines, those of the Geshurites. And he goes on to list some stuff. In verse 4 it says, and the land of the Sidonians. And then in verse 5, the land of Lebanon. And so what you have is a coastal area in the south. That's where the Philistines are. A coastal area in the north where the Sidonians are. And then a mountainous region in the north where Lebanon is. So they'd taken a lot of land, but there was still a big chunk of land left. But since the major battles were over, God is saying to them, okay, it's time for you to take possession of the land. And so surveyors are going to be sent out, and the land is going to be divided up, and they're going to cast lots for the land. And there are 12 tribes of Israel, and 12 allotments are going to be portioned out. And so you see in verse 7, that it says, now therefore apportion this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh. Now in verse 7, he's talking about most of the tribes of Israel. Because the land, when it's given out, is given out in 2 different sections. The Jordan River runs parallel to the coastline. So you've got the Mediterranean Sea. Well, I'm doing it backwards because I got to flip it around in my mind. For you get the Mediterranean Sea, and then you've got the Jordan River over here, and you got this big swath of land in between running north and south. Then on the other side of the Jordan, there's also territory that it took over. 2.5 tribes are going to go over in the territory on the other side of the Jordan to the east, and to the west of the Jordan, between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, that land is going to be given out to 9.5 tribes. And you notice when you get when you start to move through this, that in verse 14 it says, "Only to the tribe of Levi he did not give an inheritance. The offerings by fire to the Lord, the God of Israel, are their inheritance, as he spoke to them." Now here's what God has done. God has taken the Levites and made them like priests, and they serve God and they serve in the temple, and he's taken a very specific family within the tribe of Levi, of the family of Aaron, and made them priests and even a high priest that come from Aaron. And so this group of people has been given a special privilege by God. Let me read to you what Deuteronomy 18 says. Don't turn there, just listen. Moses wrote these words, "The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall have no portion or inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the Lord's offerings by fire and his portion. They shall have no inheritance among their countrymen. The Lord is their inheritance, as he promised them." So God, I'm thinking maybe by the Spirit of God being upon them in a more powerful, special way, is going to take the tribe of Levi, this one out of 12 tribes, and is going to give himself to them, and then he's going to take them and place them amongst all the other tribes, so that each of the tribes, when they get an allotment of land, is going to have within their allotment maybe 2 or 3 cities, and they'll say, all right, these cities belong to the Levites. And they get to go and they live in there. And so amongst all the people, God's presence is among the people through the Levites who serve as ministers and priests to these people. So he's given out all these cities and got all this land, and they're going to start dividing it up. Notice something else in verse 22. It says, "And the sons of Israel," they start talking about some of the conquests again, "and the sons of Israel also killed" who? Balaam. Yeah, they don't ever forget about that guy. They always want to remind you, we killed that turkey. We talked about him Sunday night. That's the only reason I'm throwing that out there. They like to just remind you sometimes that we took out a really, really bad dude. He was a prophet that was for hire. He sold his gift in order to enrich himself. And so when you start to see the land being apportioned out or given out, you have these 12 tribes, and the 2 most prominent tribes, or maybe you might want to say 3, are Judah, tribe of Judah, from which the Messiah is going to come. And then you have Joseph, who had 2 sons, and they actually became like 2 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. And God's going to give them the place right in the middle, and they're going to have the most prominent and the best position, and these are the most prominent and most important tribes at this point, and they're going to get a really special blessing from their land. So that's where Joshua chapter 14 came in, where we were last week, because Caleb was one of these members of the tribe of Judah, and Caleb had been given his allotment of land. He came and asked for it, and so that was last week's sermon. So just to kind of finish this out, when you get in the beginning of chapter 15, what you start to see is that as the land is apportioned out, it gets very specific and very detailed. This is important. We've got some surveyors that come to this church, and they know how important it is when it comes to detail when you're talking about land and property. If you talk about where I live, I have an address, and that's supposed to symbolize where I live. But if you look at the document on the deed of that property, it's probably a paragraph of very specific minutiae. There's a lot here in this place, and it just goes into all this detail. Well, that's what's going on here, because when God promised to give them the land, it's not just a general thing. It's very specific. And every tribe has been promised, you're getting something. And God is laying out in detail, this belongs to you. I've done exactly what I've said. I've been as faithful to you as my word. I've told you everything I'm going to give you, and I've done exactly what I said. So God, as He goes, gives us in detail the parameters of their property. So that's where we've been, and your eyes are probably glazing over already, and you're saying, "Preacher, just send me home." I know, but maybe it helps somebody, or maybe it'll help you one day as you start to read through it. All right, so tonight I want to talk to you about this. I want to talk to you about when you follow God with your whole heart. And we talked about Caleb last week, and we talked about how Caleb was a man who followed God with all his heart. He wasn't divided. He wasn't half-hearted. He was a man that loved his God and served his God and gave everything he could to God. It made a huge difference. So what I want to do is I want to give you a flashback, and I want to go back to the book of Numbers, and I want to come back to Joshua chapter 15. I want to show you some things about Joshua early on, and then I want to show you how it connects to what we're going to read tonight. And as Paul Harvey says, we're going to get the rest of the story tonight. So Numbers chapter, where did I say I was going to go? 13. Let me read fast and skim through some of this, and then we'll flip back over. When you follow God with your whole heart, I want to show you how the first thing that begins to happen when you become a faithful follower, you begin to stand out. You begin to stick out. People take notice. I'll show you why I said that. Verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Send out for yourself men, that they may spy out the land of Canaan, which I am going to give to the sons of Israel. You shall send a man from each of the fathers' tribes, every one a leader among them." So this is God's idea to send 12 spies into the land. Now in this flashback, I'm going back over 40 years, and I'm going back to the time where Moses, not Joshua, was the leader of the people of Israel. And when you get to that time period, they have not yet gone into Canaan land, but God is telling them, you need to have a good idea of what you're getting yourself into. Send some people over there, check it out, come back, give a report. And so each one of the 12 tribes of Israel is supposed to send a prominent leader from their tribe. And verse 6 says, from the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He's the one that was chosen. But let me remind you of something about Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. Jephunneh was a Kenizzite. That means he wasn't of the tribe of Judah. He wasn't even Jewish. He was a man that had kind of been adopted in and brought along. He was a Gentile. But we know that to be a person who is one who is a true Jew is one who is one of the heart. You have a circumcised heart, not just a circumcised body. And if your heart is for God, then you belong to the family of faith. That's what Caleb was. He was a believer. He was a follower of the one true God. He was a follower of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they accepted him and they received him. And he was such a man of faith that when it came time to choose a man who was a leader in that community and a man of good standing to take the honor of going into the promised land and bringing back the first report, they said, take Caleb. See, when you're a person that follows God with your whole heart, you stick out and people notice. There's not a whole lot of people very often in this fallen world that are noticeably following the Lord. Now, we come to church, we probably look around, we see a lot. But what about when we spread out and go out into the world? See, when we get out into the world, we're amongst people who don't know about Jesus or don't know Jesus, or they're not committed to him. Maybe they've got some knowledge of him. But when you see somebody that was really, really faithful, it makes a difference. I remember telling you about the man that won me to Jesus, and I've shared with you many times that I walked into a work site working on a building in Florence doing construction, and I was working to put the ductwork in on this industrial site. And this guy was my supervisor, and I told you that he prayed over his meals, and he didn't cuss, and he listened to Christian radio, and he read his Bible on his break. And he talked about what he heard in church. And he stuck out. I mean, he was different. There was nobody else like that on that job site. And I wasn't a believer. And here I am, 21 years old, watching this guy every day. He's consistent. He is faithful. I mean, it's not like it's one day is good and 5 days is bad. I'm talking every single day. This man lived for Jesus. He stuck out. You live for Jesus, you follow God with your whole heart, you'll start to stick out. People will take notice. And eventually, they'll start to recognize you and say, hey, there's somebody we can trust. There's somebody we can depend on. If we can't believe in anybody else, that's a good man. That's a good woman. Follow her. Watch her. Trust her. Verse 21 and 22. So they went up and they spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob at Lebo Hamath. When they had gone up into the Negev, they came to Hebron where, and I've underlined these names in my Bible. I want you to remember them. I'm going to show them to you again in just a minute. They came to Hebron where Ahaman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, were. Now Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And so when you start to follow Caleb as he went through the promised land and spied it out, one of the things he saw in this promised land was giants. He saw these big men, men of renown, men who were warriors and men who were to be feared, and men who had others following them that you didn't want to mess with them. God's going to begin to show you His plan for you if you're a man with a whole heart that follows God. God's not showing Caleb these giants for nothing. God's going to start to plant something within Caleb's heart, and he's going to look at them and think, I'm coming to get you, big boy. God said we're going to have the victory, and where you're living, one day it's going to be where I'm living. Your home is going to be my home. God's going to give me the victory over you. That's God beginning to show him His plan. He comes across these giants, and you know the Bible says that a righteous man's steps are ordered by God. I don't think it's any accident that they come across these and they write about them and they talk about them here, because you're going to see them later on when we flip back over to Joshua. So when you follow God with your whole heart, God begins to lead you in the direction that He wants your life to go, in the path that He wants you to take. By the way, sometimes God will show you something as a young man or a young woman that He won't give you the victory in until much, much later on in life. That's what's going to happen with Caleb. Sometimes God will just plant a seed in your heart that'll just grow, and eventually it'll come to fruition. Verse 23, then they came to the valley of Eshcol, and from there they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two men. Some of the pomegranates, with some of the pomegranates and the figs. So they've got grapes, pomegranates, figs. The place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster which the sons of Israel cut down from there. Now, one of the things God was beginning to teach them is this: the place where there's giants is also the place where there's fruit. If you want to be fruitful in your life, go where the giants are. And so if you want to live a life of spiritual fruitfulness, there's some giants you're going to have to face. There's some battles you're going to have to fight. And remember, we don't wage war with flesh and blood. Our battle is with powers and principalities. It's a spiritual battle. In some of the ways I've shared with you before that you might fight these battles, it might be that you're going to go on a mission trip, or you might find someone in your neighborhood and that's your one, and you're praying for that person, and you're going to ask them over to your house, and you're going to share your testimony with them. And you say, well, you know, that's like facing down a giant right there. That seems hard. That seems like something difficult to do. That's all right. See it as a battle to fight. You're going to share the gospel. You're going to live for Jesus on a work site that's very, very hard to live for Jesus. It may be that people talk about you and they hate you and despise you and they make fun of you, call you a holy roller and other things like that. And you're going to love those people and you're going to pray for those people. You're not going to despise them. And you're going to stay and you're going to be salt and light. See, there's all kinds of battles you're going to fight. But where the giants are, that's where the fruit is. And so, a man with a whole heart, his eye's not on the giants, his eye's on the fruit. He's looking on what God's going to give him, not on he's got to go through to get it, because he knows with God's help he's going to get it. So here's how the story unfolds. When they returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days, they proceeded to come to Moses. And Aaron, that's the high priest, Moses' brother, and to all the congregation of the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. And they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Now this ought to be exciting times. Good news, man. We're back. And look at what God's going to give us. But thus they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey. That's what we want, the land where the milk and honey flows. This is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Amalek is living in the land of the Negev, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of the Jordan. Caleb quieted the people. This is the man with a heart for God, isn't it? Shh, y'all listen. Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, we should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we will surely overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we're not able to go up against this people, for they're too strong for us. Jerks, dummies. They gave out to the sons of Israel a bad report on the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone and spying it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw are men of great size. There also we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak are part of the Nephilim. I mean, giants, big people, big dudes. We also became like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in their sight. Now here it is. You got 10 spies that are giving a bad report. And you got a whole congregation believing the spies' bad report. Does it change anything with Caleb though? See, Caleb is a man that walks by faith. And because he walks by faith and he trusts God, what anybody else says makes no difference at all to him. What matters to him is what God has said. And if God has spoken, as God has given a clear word, then who cares what the people say? And who cares how big the giants are? And who cares what's going on in the land? Fortified cities don't mean anything to God. You remember what happened at Jericho? March around 7 times, boom, there's it goes the wall. I mean, there's the victory right there. God can take care of walled cities. God can take care of giants. All we've got to do is trust God. And that's what it means to follow God with the whole heart. You're going to trust God for great things. A lot of people don't trust God. A lot of people don't wait on God. They'll trust God for a day or a week. They worry, God, I don't know that God will give me a husband. Maybe he won't. But he can. I don't know that God will give me a wife. I don't know that God will give us children. If he doesn't, that's fine. You trust him either way. He does or he doesn't. But you can trust him because he's faithful. I don't know that God will heal me. And sometimes when you start to get to where you don't trust God, you're going to take matters in your own hands. And what are you going to try to do? I got to save myself. Can't trust God to do it. That's where these people are. Look at the rest of the story. Chapter 14, verse 1. All the congregation lifted up their voice and they cried. The people wept that night. Well, bless their hearts. All the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. That's what happens when you try to lead people where they don't want to go. You try to teach them to walk by faith and they won't do it. They're going to rise up against the leaders. The whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Probably shouldn't have said that. Because they will. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? He wasn't. Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Those little ones are the ones that God's going to give the land to. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? No, it wouldn't. So they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. They're committing mutiny now, right? They're gone. They're going back into where? Slavery. We'd rather be slaves in Egypt than walk by faith with God and take the promised land. That's what they're saying. We cannot trust God. Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, of those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. When a Jewish person rips their clothes open like that, it's a sign of great mourning. It's internally, I'm ripped apart, and I'm going to express that outwardly. It broke their hearts. They spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, look at his humility, then he'll bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land. Two good commands there. Two things they were doing wrong. They were rebelling against the Lord, and they were fearing the people. Remember, the book of Proverbs says the fear of man is a snare. You fear the people instead of fearing God, you're going to do what the people want you to do. And you won't do what God wants you to do. Do not fear the people of the land. They'll be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. But all the congregation said to do what? Stone them with stones. Here's one more thing about it. When you're a man of God that follows God with your whole heart, there's a lot of times you're going to be hated, you're going to be misunderstood, and people around you are going to try to destroy you. They wanted to kill Joshua and Caleb, stone them with stones, but God saved them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared in the tent of meeting to all the sons of Israel. God's about to put a stop to this. All right, let's flip back over to Joshua chapter 15. Let me get back to the heart of the text, and I'm going to give you a few more thoughts about what it means to follow God with your whole heart, and then we'll call it a night. Here's what the Bible says, Joshua chapter 15, verse 13. Now he gave to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, a portion among the sons of Judah. This is Joshua. This is 40, 45, 47 years later. Now Caleb's finally come into the land. He's a man about 85 years old. Remember last week, what did he ask God for? He was asking Joshua, but really he knew God had to give it to him, so he's asking God. Joshua said, what do you want, Caleb? You're first in line. You've been waiting all this time. God made a promise to you. You're going to have the land. Tell me what you want. What did he say I wanted? He said, give me the hills and give me the giants. He didn't ask for the flat land. He didn't ask for the easy place. He didn't ask for the place where the little people were. He said, I'm 85 years old, but I've still got a heart for God. I want the biggest ones you can find. Give me mountains to climb and give me giants to fight. What a man of God. He hadn't shrunk back. He's still got a heart that beats hot for God. And he's trusting God to give it to him. So Joshua said, go get it, it's yours. So he gave Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, a portion among the sons of Judah, according to the command of the Lord to Joshua, namely Kiriath Arba. Arba being the father of Anak, that is Hebron. Caleb drove out from there the three sons of Anak. Remember I told you it was three names? Those turkeys are still in the land. Caleb hadn't forgotten them. He's coming to get them. Caleb drove out from there three sons of Anak, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai, the children of Anak. Those three I told you I underlined, there they are again. You know what happens when you follow God with your whole heart? God gives you an inheritance. He promised Joshua, there's a place for you. You just stay with me, and one day you're going to be there. 40 years in the wilderness, everybody his age died, but he lived. Everybody except him and Joshua. Joshua made it in, Caleb made it in, everybody else died out. But God told him when he brought him out of Egypt, I brought you out that I might bring you in. I didn't bring you out here to die in the wilderness. I brought you out here to give you something. And every one of us, when God saved you, he brought you out of a slavery to sin and to self and to flesh. When you said, I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe he died and rose again. And I want to receive his gift of eternal life, so I'm believing in him for the salvation of my soul. And the day that you bowed your head and you bowed your heart and you said, God, I'm a sinner and I need Jesus to save me. God, the Holy Spirit stepped into you and you became a new person. And God broke the power that sin had on you. God broke the bonds of the devil on you. And now God gave you a freedom and a victory you'd never known before. He put a spring in your step and a joy in your heart. And now you live for Jesus. But God brought you out of that He might bring you into something. And God's got a spiritual blessing for you that He's had for you since the foundation of the world. But you got to go fight to get it. You got to work hard in this life so that in the next life you receive your reward. This is the picture that we see here. They've come into the promised land, but now they're in the promised land so that they might walk by faith, live for God, have a heart that beats for God, not a divided heart, but a true heart. And in doing so, what they're going to find is that God begins to bless them with victory after victory after victory. And the same thing's true for us. We know spiritual victory after spiritual victory when we walk by faith, trust in God, believe Him for great things, and we see Him do the miraculous in and through us. That's what's happening here. God gives you an inheritance, just like He's given to Joshua and Caleb. We'll see Joshua's a little bit later on. And what's amazing is that, once again, Caleb is not Jewish. But don't ever let your first birth be an excuse that keeps you from getting what God wants to give you because of your second birth. Don't ever say, I can't because, and then use something in your life as an excuse for why you can't. If God's got something for you, go get what He's got for you. Something else you want to see about a man that follows God with his whole heart, God gives you the victory. The victory he has comes because of God. It's not that Caleb's strong. This is an 85-year-old man. But God's giving him the victory because he's walking by faith and trusting God for it. And sometimes the victories God gives you in your latter days are the biggest and the best you'll ever know in your life. Sometimes what you see at the end of your life is better than what you saw at the beginning when you were younger and stronger. Sometimes the victories come at a time when you least expect. That's what happened with Caleb. I mean, he expected this, but it happened at the end of his life. He asked for giants, and he beat them. Verse 15. Then he went up from there against the inhabitants of Debir. Now, Debir formerly was Kiriath Sepher. Now, here's what's happened with Caleb. Caleb took a step of faith and he went out and said, perhaps God will give this to me, and if He will, I'm going to bless Him for it, but I'm going to trust God to give me this place that is renamed Hebron, but started out Kiriath Arba. But once he gets the victory in this one place, he doesn't do what a lot do in this day, which is settle down and say, I'm done. Time to retire. I'm finished. Boy, I got this one thing. No, he starts looking around and says, where else can I go? He doesn't just want a little bit. He says, give me some more. He's looking for another fight to get into, another spiritual battle to wage war in. And so he steps out in faith and says, there's this other place over here. It's inhabited. The enemy is there. These are people God has judged. They're supposed to lose it. What they've got is supposed to be ours. Let's go get that. So more and more, his territories begin to expand. He is not done. Thank God for people that even in their 80s will say this, God's not done with me. I've still got breath in my body. I've still got strength in my bones. I'm going till Jesus takes me home. So Caleb said, verse 16, the one who attacks Kiriath Sepher and captures it, I'm going to give him Achsah, my daughter, as a wife. Now, one of the things that begins to happen is if you're somebody that follows God with your whole heart, is you're going to start to inspire others. People are going to watch you in the battles you fight and the victories that God gives you and say, you know, if God did it for him, He can do it for me. If God did it for her, why can't He do it for me? This guy named Othniel is his nephew. And he hears what Caleb says. He says, well, I'll go. Now, he probably watched Caleb a long time. Might have even gone to fight with Caleb at that other place. Now he's going to step out. He's now raised up somebody to follow after him in his footsteps. What we're going to find is later on in the book of Judges, judges were heroes that rescued and saved the nation of Israel when they started to go downhill. The very first one God raises up is this guy named Othniel. Where did he learn to walk by faith and fight the fight the way that Caleb? He learned it from Caleb. He learned to have victory because Caleb taught him how to do it. And so Caleb's begun to inspire others. Now this is interesting. He says, I'm going to give my daughter to whoever can go capture this city. Now, most of the time in this day, when dads have a daughter, they start seeing the guys that they're bringing home, they're asking themselves in the back of their mind, can this turkey provide for my daughter? Because he doesn't look like he makes a lot of money. I don't want my daughter to starve to death. I want her to have somebody that's actually going to put food on the table and a roof over their head. But I think what Caleb was looking for? I think Caleb was looking for a man that was a spiritual giant. Somebody that said, I'm willing to face down the giants. I'm willing to go where nobody else will go and fight where nobody else will fight. Caleb wanted somebody for his daughter that was going to walk by faith like he walked by faith. So he said, whoever can do that is going to get my daughter. Sometimes guys start dating girls and they find out that she's a Christian. They start talking a good Christian talk. Yeah, I'm a believer. I know Jesus. But what you got to do is you got to watch what they do, not listen to what they say, because anybody can talk. Are they growing in their faith? Do they share the gospel? Are they soul winners? Do they read their Bible? Do they know their Bible? Do they go to church? And I don't mean go with her when she goes. I'm talking about if she wasn't there, they'd be there. I mean, how strong is that relationship that boy has with Jesus? And so that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for talk. You're looking for somebody that walks the walk. Caleb wasn't looking for somebody that said, I'll go do it. Caleb wanted the guy that was actually going to do it. Give me the one that backs up what he says and walks the walk. So Caleb inspired Othniel. And Othniel heads on down there. And the Bible says in verse 17, Othniel, the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, captured it. So he gave him Achsah, his daughter, as a wife. And so now he's got a spiritual heritage, doesn't he? Not only has he raised up a daughter, but now he's made sure that she's got a man of God that's going to come along and lead their family spiritually, the way a man is supposed to lead the family. And so his family's been blessed, but he blessed it more than one way. It says in verse 18, it came about that when she came to him, she persuaded him to ask her father for a field. So it sounds like when she came to Othniel, she talked to her new husband about it and said, I've got a father that is generous and gracious and kind and loving. Why don't we see if he can do for us what only a good, gracious, loving father would do? So she alighted from the donkey, and Caleb said to her, what do you want? She said, give me a blessing. That's a special favor. Since you've given me the land of the Negev, give me also springs of water. So he gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. Sounds like they had a piece of land there. And it might have been okay to have that piece of land, but it wasn't going to be much good without any water. And she says, Daddy, I need some water. He says, it's yours. We're going to see this later on. Caleb, this isn't the only time Caleb gives. He's very gracious, very generous. He's a man that blessed his family in more than one way. If you follow God with your whole heart, it makes a huge, huge, huge difference. Let me show you a few things, and then we'll get out of here. I thought I'd end there, but let me jump ahead in a few places. I'll show you the difference it makes. At the end of chapter 15, look at verse 63. So after Caleb, the story about Caleb gets finished, God, is continuing through Joshua to apportion the land. And it says, now as for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the sons of Judah could not drive them out. The Jebusites live with the sons of Judah at Jerusalem until this day. And so when the book of Joshua was written, they were still there. Now later on, a king by the name of David runs them out and takes Jerusalem. But they were still there. So what's happening? There's a problem here, isn't there? Because God promised them as long as they'd be faithful and be obedient, they'd have the victory. But now there's this walled city in the middle of their territory, and instead of them getting the enemy out, because the enemy is worshiping the devil through idol worship and committing all sorts of immorality that God has judged and said this is worthy of death, and instead of getting that out, it's now part of their land. And they live among it, and they intermingle with them. Let me show you two more spots like that. Look at the end of chapter 16. This was the tribe of Ephraim. And the Bible says in verse 10, chapter 16, they did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. So the Canaanites live in the midst of Ephraim to this day, and they became forced laborers. So Joshua came through and he won the battle, but think about like France when Germany takes it over in the Great War. Or is it World War II? And there's pockets of resistance everywhere. And so there's pockets of Jebusites and Canaanites that are still in the land. Now the children of Israel are supposed to wipe all that out. But instead here, what they do is instead of wiping them out, the Bible says they made them forced laborers. That means they enslaved them. Here's another example of it in verse 12 of chapter 17. The sons of Manasseh could not take possessions of these cities because the Canaanites persisted in living in the land. It came about when the sons of Israel became strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor. They did like their brothers, the Ephraimites. They made them slaves, but they did not drive them out completely. Now, what did God say they were supposed to do? Supposed to wipe them out. Why? Because they're wicked. What did God say was going to happen if you didn't wipe them out? They're going to influence you. You're going to start living like they lived. You're going to start doing what they do. And if you start doing what they do and living like they did, living in that sin and immorality, what's going to happen? God's going to run you out of the land just like He ran them out of the land. You get in sin like they did, and God's going to do to you the same thing He did to them. And we found out in the book of Jeremiah, God was as faithful to that as anything. Here's the point. Caleb had a heart that followed God, followed it wholly. These tribes, though, seem to have done what? They have blended in with evil and unrighteousness. Instead of being pure and undefiled, they're intermingling with evil. And it's in their midst. And you're starting to see, not only do they not have the victory, but they're sowing the seeds of their own destruction. It makes a difference when you follow God with your whole heart. Caleb's a hero. Caleb had a spiritual blessing that came after him because his family was blessed by him. His nation was blessed by him. The giants were run out. There was victory. But with many who came into the land, they compromised. They joined themselves with wickedness instead of running it out. And it's a lesson for all of us. When God saves you, He didn't save you to live in wickedness. He saved you to walk in holiness. And if you persist in keeping in your life something that God says should never be there, not only will you not have victory, but you'll also be sowing the seeds of your own destruction. God's not going to bless that mess. Get the sin out. Have a heart that beats for God. And like Caleb, keep on going to the very end. You got a victory in one place. Thank God for it. Then say, God, what's next? God, give me the mountains. God, give me the giants. God, you're not done with me. I'm going to keep fighting until Jesus comes or I go to Him. Let that be resounding within your soul. Let's pray together. Father, we want to thank you for this night and for everyone that's here. God, thank you for your word and for how it speaks so loudly to where we are today. God, there's giants around us. There's mountains to climb. There's wars to fight. But God, we've got the victory through Jesus. I pray that we'd walk by faith, trust you for the big things, for the hard things, believe you for the things that The world will say it can't happen. There's no way it's going to happen. But God, we know that when it does happen, you're going to get the glory for it because it had to have come from you. God, may you get glory from the life of everyone here as they seek your will, as you show them the path that they need to go to find the giants. And God will praise you for every victory that comes. In your mighty name we pray. Amen. Have a great night. God bless you.